Tonight, calm stories over rainy Minecraft, and everyone asks the same quiet question. Am I overreacting? You decide. First up, my best friend of 15 years stopped texting me back. No fight, no warning, nothing. I thought I knew what that silence meant. I was wrong. Here we go. My best friend of 15 years stopped texting me back in the middle of March. Not slowly, not adrift. On a Tuesday, she was sending me dog videos, and by the weekend, nothing. The read receipts were the worst part. She saw everything. My messages sat there marked read, sometimes within a minute, and no reply ever came. She still liked my posts. She still waved across the road. She just would not type a single word back to me. The first week, I told myself she was busy. The second week, I asked if I had done something, and she wrote back 4 words. Of course not, busy, and went quiet again. By the third week, I was keeping score, and I did not much like the person that was turning me into. So I settled on the obvious answer. 15 years, and she was done with me. People outgrow each other quietly, and the polite ones do it exactly like this. Read, like, wave, and never answer. I started drafting the big message you write at midnight and delete in the morning. I had a whole speech saved. 5 weeks and 2 days in, I drove over to say it to her face. I got as far as her kitchen. And her husband, who's the worst liar I have ever met, worse than her, and that is saying something, looked up at me, went pale and said, "Is it the 14th already?" It was not the 14th, it was the 9th. And that is how I found out about the party. My 40th, 5 days away, planned for 2 months. My sister flying in from New Zealand, 31 hours of flights, paid for out of a fund the 2 of them had been quietly filling since. January. My friend had organised every bit of it. She went silent because she knows herself. 9 years ago, she ruined her own surprise party in a group chat, asking what time she should arrive. She cannot hold a secret in a text window, so she stopped opening them. 5 weeks of reading my messages with her thumbs pressed together, so the one thing she wanted me to have would stay a surprise. She lasted 2 more days before her husband's face gave the rest away. The party happened anyway. My sister jumped out from behind the good curtains, and I sat down on the floor. That story ends there. 5 silent weeks, 31 hours of flights, and a friend who went quiet because she loves me louder than she can lie. I have never complained about a read receipt since. I lent a friend $2,000 4 years ago. She never brought it up again, and last spring she posted photos from a week away. The first time it crossed my mind, I let it go. Money between friends is awkward, and she had been in a real hole that winter. The second time was the used car, a year in, which she told me all about. After that, I caught myself keeping a quiet list, a new coat, a weekend at the coast, a birthday dinner where she picked the place. Somewhere in there, I made up my mind about her. I had become the friend you go to when the rent is short, and all that silence looked like her hoping I would forget. I never said a word. I just got quieter with her, which is worse. This spring, my mother broke her wrist, and I took over her errands, which meant the pharmacy. I stood at the counter, braced for a number I had been dreading, and the woman said one far too small. I asked her to check it. She checked, went careful with her voice, and said somebody else was paying on the account, so I asked who it was. She turned the screen toward me, and there was my friend's name. $73 a month for 26 months straight onto my mother's prescriptions from the friend I had decided was using me. The last payment was bigger than the rest. She had worked out what was left of the loan and cleared it in one go, down to the last dollar. I called my mother from the car before I started the engine. She went quiet, then told me the truth herself. She had known the whole time and had made my friend promise not to tell me because she did not want me knowing what the medicine cost. The two of them had made a quiet deal and kept it for 2 years. The next day, I asked my friend about the week away, and she gave me one plain answer. It was her sister's trip, paid for by her sister so they could go to their aunt's funeral. She had posted the good photos and kept the rest to herself. Then she asked me, gently, to let the whole thing go. That story ends there. She was quietly paying off a debt at a pharmacy counter while I was busy being hurt about it. She still will not let me buy her lunch, but I buy it anyway. Somebody forwarded me a screenshot of my oldest friend's messages about me. One line in it said I could not be left alone on Sundays. It came from a group chat with 30 people. Any of them could have read that sentence before I did. My father died in March. At the funeral tea, I said out loud that Sundays would be the worst because Sunday was the day I always rang him. I barely remember saying it, but she was standing next to me when I did. The Sundays after that were long and strange, and she kept turning up. The first time, she came by with soup and said she was passing. The second time, she brought a chair she wanted my opinion on, which is a thin excuse for a Sunday. By the third one, I was keeping count. She came nearly every week, and on the odd Sunday she missed, her cousin turned up with an excuse just as thin. Then the screenshot landed, and I built the ugliest story I could. There it was in writing. My oldest friend, telling all those people I could not cope, handing my bad days around like a chore. The soup and the chair turned into duty, and the cousin became her week off. I did not call her. I drove to her house on a Tuesday night and asked her to show me her phone. She did not argue. She handed it over and went to put the kettle on. It was a calendar. A shared one, started 4 days after the funeral, and the note pinned at the top was my own sentence, close to word for word. 6 people had joined it. Every Sunday to the end of the year had a name on it, and a line about what to bring and what not to say. Then I scrolled back. 16 Sundays had gone by since it started, and her name sat on 13 of them. The rest belonged to her cousin, who told me later that she still texted at 7 to make sure somebody would come. The line about not leaving me alone was never a complaint. It was an instruction, and she had mostly been following it herself. I never told the group what I saw. I did tell her to lock her phone. She still comes most Sundays, with a soup or a chair or some reason that does not hold up. That story ends there. The screenshot said exactly what it meant. I just read it in the wrong voice. My oldest friend got married last June, and my invitation to her wedding said 6 o'clock in the evening. 20 years of friendship, and I was asked to arrive after the meal, once the plates were cleared and the speeches were done. The first time I read the card, I told myself it was a misprint. 3 weeks later, a photo went up online, one place card on a long white table, and the name on it was Dana. I was sure it was the Dana from her office. Then another old school friend texted to say her card read 6 o'clock too, and after that I stopped explaining it away. The story I built was simple. The day had a cheap half, and the old friends had been filed into it while newer people got the table. I carried that for 11 weeks. I ironed a dress, worked out when to eat so I would not be hungry at a wedding, and practiced looking fine in the mirror. 2 weeks out, I did the thing I had been putting off. I drove over with a box of her mum's old photographs and asked her straight out if there was a reason I wasn't at the meal. She sat down on the floor beside that box and told me. Her husband's mother had paid for the sit-down, every penny, and had filled the room herself. 54 seats, and everyone went to the groom's side of the family. The Dana on that place card was his cousin, not anyone from her office. My friend had asked for 4 names to be added, mine at the top, and lost every single one. She showed me a folder on her phone, seating plans she had kept redrawing late at night. 6 o'clock was the only part of the day she got to plan. She had put me at the very start of it on purpose, so we could have a piece of it before the room filled up. And we did. At 6:10, she came out to the car park in her wedding dress, sat on a low wall, and took her shoes off. For 40 minutes, it was just the two of us and a bag of crisps from the bar, and nobody else knew where the bride was. That story ends there. She had no say in the seats, but the hour was hers, and she chose to start it on a wall with me. Honestly, I'd take that over the dinner. For 6 years, my oldest friend answered every invitation the same way. Probably not, don't count on me. And then, most of the time, she turned up anyway. The first time, I thought she was busy that week. The second time was my birthday dinner. She gave me the usual answer, then rang my doorbell halfway through the main course, still in her work shoes, asking if we had saved her. Any. The third time, I stopped calling it coincidence because it was dinners, a housewarming, a Tuesday coffee. So I stopped counting her in. I cooked for the people who had said yes, and when she arrived, I would be a chair short. She would sit on the arm of the sofa with a plate on her knees and remind me she had warned me. The story I settled on was not kind. I decided she was keeping her options open, holding the night loose in case something better came along, and settling for me when nothing did. I believed that for years. So I tested it. I asked her for a Saturday 3 weeks out and got the usual answer. Then I asked for a Thursday 2 days away and she said yes at once. That did not fit, so the next time she was on my sofa arm, I asked her straight out why she never said yes to anything. She did not argue. She got her phone out, opened the shift app her work used, and turned the screen around so I could read it. Her rota went up 48 hours before each shift and could still change after that, which was why the Thursday worked and the Saturday never could. Then she took a small notebook out of her bag and let me read that too. Every swap she had ever asked for was listed with dates, 26 of them in 2 years. I checked them against my calendar that night, and everyone matched an evening at my table. I asked why she never just said yes and hoped. She said a yes she could not keep would cost me a chair, a plate, and a bit of hope, and she would rather arrive as a surprise than break a promise. She still says probably not, and I set her a place anyway. If she cannot come, I clear it away quietly. That story ends there. She would rather owe you nothing than promise you something, and I've stopped arguing with it. The sofa arm is her chair now. 5 of my friends went away for a long weekend, and nobody asked me. The same people I'd shared a group chat with since we were 19. The first time I noticed something, one of them stopped talking mid-sentence on the phone. The second time, a couple of them had the same photo up, a grey road by the sea, and neither said where it was. The third time, our chat had been silent for almost 2 weeks, and I knew somewhere there was another one that had not. That night in my kitchen, I let myself think it. I had become the one you do not invite. 20 years of birthdays and moving vans and hospital car parks, and now my friends were careful around me. I spent Saturday refreshing photos of a coast road nobody had mentioned. On Sunday, I drove out through the rain, telling myself I wanted the air. Their cars were in a gravel car park by a church, and I sat there for an hour. They came down off the hill late in the afternoon, soaked through and walking like old men, one of them carrying her boots. Nobody looked caught. The one with the boots laughed, dug into her pack, and handed me a wet notebook. They had walked 16 miles in one day. It was the exact route of the race I kept saying I would do once I was fit enough. Every hill was numbered, 11 in all, with a short note beside each in different handwriting. Which climb is the bad one? Where the ground goes soft, where you can fill a bottle. How long the last stretch really feels. The last page had my name at the top. Under it, someone had written, "For the day you say yes." 4 of us walk with you. 1 drives to the finish, and nobody has to be the slow one alone. I asked why nobody told me. She said telling me would have made it a favor, and I have never said yes to a favor. She was right, and she let me stand in the rain and know it. That evening, my phone buzzed, and there I was in the other chat, under months of maps and weather screenshots. At the bottom sat a date in February, when they walked the route again to check the notes. I'm doing the race in April. That story ends there. That notebook lives on my kitchen table now, and I read the bad hill page more often than I need to. My sister and I had not spoken in 6 years. For 2 of those years, there was a photo of my sister on my friend's fridge at eye level, right where I stood to make coffee every week. The first time I saw it, I assumed it had come out of an old envelope of prints and landed there by accident. The second time, it had a different magnet on it. By the third time, I started paying attention, and I understood it was not going anywhere. Same spot, same height, every Thursday while the kettle went. So I decided what it meant. She had picked a side, and she had picked it somewhere I could not miss. I never said a word about it. I just started making my coffee facing the window instead. That lasted 2 years. I got very good at not looking at 1 square foot of a friend's kitchen. Then one Thursday I took it down. I slid it under the pile of menus by the toaster, and I said nothing, and I watched her the whole evening to see if she would notice. The next week it was back up. Same spot, same magnet, straightened. So I asked her. I heard my own voice come out harder than I meant it to. She said she had been calling my sister, not once. Every few weeks for 2 years on a Sunday, because Sunday was the day my sister could talk. 61 calls. She had a note of them in her phone, and she showed me, and I read the dates while my coffee went cold. She was working, very slowly, toward our mother's 80th. She wanted both of us in the room for it, and she had decided that was worth 2 years of short phone calls with a woman she barely knew. The photo went up the week my sister said yes. She said she had been waiting for me to ask about it. 2 years of standing at that fridge, and I never did. She would not bring it up herself because she thought it had to be mine to start. The party is in October. I am going. I do not know yet what my sister and I will say to each other, and I have stopped trying to plan it. That story ends there. 61 Sunday phone calls and 1 photo at eye level, kept up by a woman who was never picking a side. She was just trying to get us both in one room. My oldest friend asked somebody she'd known 4 years to be her daughter's godmother. I found out at the christening, off the order of service, standing in the 3rd row. The first time something felt off was in April. She cancelled a coffee and never put another one in. The second time was May, when I asked about the christening date, and she said she'd let me know. By the 3rd time, I started paying attention. She had stopped talking about the baby around me at all. So I stood in that church and read the name twice. I have known her since we were 9. I want to say out loud what I decided because I believed it for a month. 26 years, and I had been passed over for somebody she met at a work thing. I smiled through the buffet. I cried in the car park. I said nothing for 9 days. Then I drove over on a Tuesday with a bag of clothes my 2 had grown out of and asked her straight out why it wasn't me. She stopped with a plate in her hand. She said, "But you never signed it." I said, "Signed what?" She said, "The papers from March." I had never seen any papers. She said she'd have the solicitor send another copy. It came 11 days later, 9 pages, and my name was on 7 of them. She had not made me a godmother. She had made me the guardian, the real one, the one who takes both children if the worst thing happens. The one who gets rung at 3 in the morning. The first copy went to my old flat. I moved out of there in 2019. She'd given the solicitor an address she still had in her phone, and the envelope sat in a sorting office all spring. When nothing came back, she thought I had read it and said no. For 4 months, she believed I had been asked the biggest question of her life and had chosen not to answer. She never rang to chase it. The godmother is the church part. She handed that to somebody easy because she thought the hard job had already been turned down. I signed it at her kitchen table that night. My copy lives in the drawer with the passports now. That story ends there. 9 pages, 1 wrong address, and 4 months of 2 people being careful with each other for no reason at all. I open my post the same day now. We shared an allotment plot for 9 years. Officially it was hers because a tenancy only holds 1 name, but the Saturdays were ours and so were the tomatoes. Then she stopped coming, and in March the list at the gate said the plot had changed hands. The first Saturday she missed, she had a cold. The second, her knee was playing up. By the third one, I stopped believing the knee, because she had never missed 2 in a row before. She stopped answering on Saturdays too. She would ring me back on a Tuesday instead, cheerful, full of weather, and never once mention the garden. Our site runs on numbers, not names. Once a year, the tenancy list goes up on the notice board, plot numbers down one side, tenancy numbers down the other. I knew hers by heart off the renewal slips. Plot 31 had a new number against it, and hers was gone from the page. So I filled in the story myself. She had handed the garden back without a word to me, and a stranger off the waiting list will be digging up our beds by April. I stood at that board for a long time. On the Monday, I went to the site office. The man in there has run the place since before I was born. I told him our plot had been given away. He asked my name, then turned the book around and let me read it. The new tenancy number was mine. She had come in on the 9th of February and filled out a transfer form with my name and address on it in her own handwriting. Then he pulled out the waiting list because I clearly still did not understand. 93 names. A surrendered plot goes to the top of that list inside a week, he said. She knew that better than anyone. I rang her that night, and she told me the rest herself. Her daughter had found her a flat at the other end of the country, near the hospital and near help, and she was going whether she liked it or not. She could not stop the move. She could stop the garden going to a stranger. I sent her a photo of the first tomatoes in July. She wrote back one line. "Too early," she said. "You watered them too much." That story ends there. One form in her handwriting and a whole list of people who never got a look in. I water them too much on purpose now. She started our book club. 11 years, her living room, her rules. Then in January she quit it in a 2-line message and never came back. The message said she was stepping back and thank you all. That was the whole thing. 11 years, 2 lines. The first time we met without her, we picked a book she would have hated and we joked about it. The second time, nobody joked. By the third time I started paying attention, she had gone quiet in the group chat and stayed that way. Then somebody said she had found a better group across town, a proper one, with a reading list and people who actually finish. And I believed it for most of a year. So that was the story I carried. We had bored her out of a thing she built. 11 years of her making the coffee and chasing us through chapters, and we had worn her down. I want to name that because I believed it for 10 months. In November, I drove over on a Tuesday to give back a book she had lent me. Her car was gone. I went back the next Tuesday and the one after that, 7 o'clock every time, and no car. So I sat in my own kitchen and finally opened the book. It was full of her. Little pencil notes down the margins in her small square handwriting. Questions. Arguments with the author. I counted them. 119 notes in one paperback she was never going to discuss with anybody. The date at the front was October, 9 months after she quit. So I called her sister and asked what happens on Tuesdays. She had enrolled in a night class. Tuesdays, 7 to 9, at the college by the Ring Road, finishing the diploma she walked away from at 19. She had not told one person. At 52, she could not make herself say the words, "I have gone back to school." She was never in a better group. She was in a classroom with people half her age, doing her homework at her own kitchen table. We moved book club to Wednesdays. I told her the room was free then, which was true enough. She came the first week with the book already read and her notes in the margins. That story ends there. 119 pencil notes and a woman too shy to tell us she was doing something brave. She finishes in June. We are all going. My oldest friend was 40 minutes late to everything. Not roughly, exactly, for 11 years, to dinners and films and my daughter's birthday party. The first time, I blamed the traffic. The second time, I booked a table for 7 and she sat down at 20 to 8, apologizing in the same easy way. After that, I started checking the clock whenever a door opened, and she was never off by more than a minute or two. For a long while, I let it tell me something ugly. There is a kind of lateness that feels like a ranking, and I had quietly decided I sat at the bottom of hers. Then I tested it. I told her lunch was at 12:30 when the table was booked for 1, and she walked in at 1:10. The same margin to the minute, counted from the time I gave her, not the real one. Whatever this was, it had nothing to do with me, and somehow that stung more than the lateness ever had. So the next Saturday I drove to her flat to collect her, earlier than I'd said I would. Her sister answered the door. I had met her maybe twice, because she doesn't get out, and my friend had always kept the reasons vague. She pointed down the road, where my friend was walking a small brown dog towards the lamppost. The sister told me everything at the kitchen table while we waited. The dog is hers, but she can't take him out herself, so my friend walks him before she goes anywhere. The vet timed the loop for his old heart, 40 minutes exactly, and she will not cut it short. She starts it at the moment she would otherwise leave, because a tired dog sleeps until she's home. Then she opened a drawer and showed me a stack of pocket diaries, 1 tick for every walk, going back to 2015. 4,015 ticks, and not one day missed. She never told anybody, the sister said, because she didn't want her nights out to need explaining. When she came back up the road, I said nothing. Now I book everything a loop's worth early. She arrives bang on time, and she thinks I've simply gone very organized in my old age. That story ends there. Somewhere tonight an old dog is getting his full walk, and nobody at the table knows why she is suddenly punctual. I've never kept a secret that gladly in my life. Every Christmas card my friends sent came addressed to my husband and the kids. My name was never on the envelope, and it stayed that way for 9 years. The 1st December, I figured she ran out of room on the line. The 2nd, I checked the back of the envelope in case she had added me there. By the 3rd, I was keeping them in a drawer, and they matched, same neat handwriting, his name and the kids, never mine. She is my oldest friend. We met at 17, she stood up at my wedding, and she held both of my babies before most of my family did. That many Decembers stopped feeling like an oversight and started feeling like a choice. I let myself believe she liked the shape of my life more than she liked me, fond of my husband, sweet with my kids, and finished with me. I never said it out loud. I just sent shorter cards back. Last December, I drove over to ask her straight out. I had the whole speech planned at red lights. I got as far as her hallway, where the outgoing post sits in a wooden tray, and stopped. On top lay a white envelope, stamped and ready, with my name on it, and under my name, the office I had left back in 2016. Instead of the speech, I held the envelope up and asked what it was. She went a little pink and explained, right there in the hallway. When we were 24, I told her the 10 minutes before the office opened were the only part of the day that felt like mine. She remembered, so every year she mailed my card to my desk, separate from the family one, where nobody would be around while I read it. She had no idea I had ever left that job. She thought I just liked keeping it private. She made a call that afternoon, and in February, an old co-worker mailed me a box from the supply room. Inside was every sealed card from the missing years, 61 pages, and the longest letter was from the year my mother died. I read them a little at a time before anyone else in the house was awake. She has my home address now, and my card still comes in its own envelope. I still open it alone. That story ends there. Some people say they love you, and some quietly prove it for years and never mention it. I got the second kind. For 9 years, I was on my friend's family phone plan. $12 a month, paid on the 1st. Then in October, she texted me. I have had to take your line off. Sorry, that was the whole message. The first time I rang her about it, it went to voicemail. The second time, she said work was busy and she would call me later. She didn't. By the third time I started paying attention, and I saw she had gone quiet weeks before that text. A birthday lunch she skipped. So I built the story. There is a particular sting in being taken off something called a family plan by somebody who is not family and never had to be. I decided she had finally added it up. 9 years of me on her bill, and dropping me was easier than saying so. I set up my own plan that Saturday, new number, $61 a month. Then I did the thing I had been avoiding. I still had the login for the old account, so I opened it up to see myself gone. I was not gone. My line was still there, with a different name on it. So I called my old number, and my daughter answered. Her phone had been cut off at college in September. She missed 2 bills, then a third, and she was much too proud to ring me about it. She rang my friend instead. My friend did not lecture her and did not tell me. She put my daughter's number in the only free slot she had, which was mine, so every group chat and every classmate could still reach her. Then she paid the first 3 months of my new plan, $183, on the same afternoon she sent me that apology. The receipt was in my email, under a subject line I had written off as junk. She said she would have told me eventually. She said my daughter asked her not to, and a promise to a frightened 19-year-old counts for more than a promise to me. I said that was not fair. She said she knew. My daughter has my old number now. I have a new one. My friends still will not take money for October, and I have stopped offering. That story ends there. 9 years, $12 a month, and one short apology that was covering for somebody else's kid. She is still the worst texter I know. I gave my old guitar to my closest friend when I stopped playing. 6 years later, I walked past a second-hand shop downtown, and there it was in the window, my sticker still on the back. She used to take it everywhere. Birthdays, the beach, somebody's back garden in October when it was too cold to be outside. Then it stopped coming. The first time, she said it was in her other car. The second time, she said she'd left it at home. By the third time, I started paying attention, because I'd ask about the guitar, and she'd ask about my job. So I stood on that sidewalk and told myself the sensible thing. You can tell yourself a gift is a gift, and the person can do as they like with it. You can tell yourself that and still stand there feeling sold. I decided she had needed money and hadn't asked me. Or worse, that she was done with it and hadn't wanted to say so to my face. I could have walked on. I went in instead. I told the man behind the counter I liked the guitar in the window and asked what he wanted for it. He said it wasn't for sale. He said the shop does repairs and the finished ones go in the window because they look better than the stock. Then he turned the ticket around so I could read it. New frets, new nuts, full setup, $180. Paid off in 6 payments of $30. The last one cleared 2 weeks before. Her name on the customer line. And under it, in his handwriting, hold until December 23rd. My son had started playing in March. He was learning on a school guitar with a bowed neck and the strings sitting high off it. I had mentioned that to her once, in her car, the way you mention things. She wasn't selling my guitar. She had been paying $30 a month to get it right before she handed it to him. I never said a word about the shop. On Christmas morning, she gave it to him and told him it used to be mine, and then she made him play something before anybody got coffee. He is not good yet. It sounded fine anyway. That story ends there. 1 sticker, 6 payments of $30, and a guitar that came back better than I ever kept it. I still walk that block, and I still look in the window. My friend spends every party at my kitchen sink. She has never sat down at the table, not once, and she has always gone by 9. The first time, I thought she was being kind. It was a birthday. The sink was full, and she had her sleeves rolled up before I could stop her. The second time, I told her to leave it. She smiled and kept going. By the third time I started paying attention, it was every single party. She'd come in, say hello to the room, set her bag down, and walk straight to the sink. She never ate much. She never took a chair. Around 9, she'd dry her hands, find her coat, and go. So I built a story about it. I decided it was a comment, a quiet point about the state of my house. Or worse, a way to be in my home without having to talk to anybody in it. I told my husband she was hiding on my sink. He said she probably just likes washing up. Nobody just likes washing up. Then in March I ran a test. I emptied the sink before people came, ran the dishwasher early, and put every glass away. There was nothing left to do in that kitchen. She found something anyway. She stood there washing 4 wine glasses, one at a time, very slowly. So I put my back against the counter and asked her outright why she had never, in all these years, let me be the one at that sink. She said, "You told me." And I said, "Told you what?" A barbecue at my old flat in 2009. I'd had 1 drink and I said the part I hate isn't the cooking or the noise. It's the kitchen at midnight on my own after everyone has gone home. 1 sentence, 17 years ago, and she heard it. I counted afterwards, off the calendar and some old photos. 41 parties in this house and the one before it. 41, and I have never once cleaned up after my own. She still won't sit. She still leaves at 9. I have stopped trying to move her, so now I stand at the other end of the counter and dry. That story ends there. 41 parties, one sentence about midnight, and a woman who decided I would never have to stand in that kitchen alone. I leave a tea towel out for her now, where she can reach it. She had always been the friend who told me the truth. Then for a whole year, whatever I asked, all I got back was, "You know best." The first time it was a car, and whether to fix the old one or scrap it. She said, "You know best," and I laughed and said that was no help. The second time it was a job with a move attached, saying 4 words, then she changed the subject. By the third time I started paying attention, because it did not matter what I brought her. Paint colours, a wedding, whether the man I was seeing was a mistake. You know best, warm every time and empty every time. I read it the worst way there is. That is what people say when they have stopped caring how it turns out. 21 years of her telling me straight, and now this. It felt like being handed back to myself in a bag. So I tested her. I said I was thinking of selling the house and moving to the coast, which was a terrible idea, and she knew it. She stirred her tea and said, "You know best." That was the day I stopped being sad and asked her straight out when she stopped caring what happened to me. She did not argue. She got her wallet out and took out an index card, soft at the corners from being carried. On it, in her handwriting, was something I had said in the worst week of my divorce, that her advice was making it harder. That every time she told me what to do, I felt smaller in my own life. I do not remember saying it, not one word. She had put the date at the top, 14 months. On the back were tally marks in pencil, 62 of them, one for every time she had an opinion ready and put it away. She was waiting for me to ask again, out loud, so she would know the rule was lifted. She kept the card so a bad day could not talk her out of it. So I asked her about the coast. She talked for 40 minutes and told me it was the worst plan she had ever heard. I have not felt that steady in a year. She still keeps the card. That story ends there. 62 pencil marks and 4 words from a woman who took me at my word for 14 months. I ask her things properly now, and she has a lot saved up. For 3 years, my friend would only meet at one cafe. It was 25 minutes from her and 30 from me, with bad parking and worse coffee. The first time, I thought she'd picked it off a map. The second time, I offered a place halfway, and she said she liked that one. By the third time, I started paying attention. Same cafe, same table by the window. She would say yes to any day I offered, as long as it was there. So I built the obvious story. Everyone has a friend who has to pick the place. I decided it was about control. Or worse, that she didn't want to be seen at my end of town. I never said it out loud. I just started dreading the drive. Then I tested it. I booked a table 2 streets from my house and told her it was my treat. She came. But she kept checking her phone, and at 12:30 she went quiet, and she left before the plates were cleared. That was a Wednesday. So the next Wednesday, I drove to the old cafe by myself and sat at her table by the window. At 12:10, my daughter came out of the college doors across the street. My friend was already on the bench outside with 2 brown paper bags. My daughter's college is across that road. I had known that for 3 years and never once made it mean anything. I rang her that night and she told me the rest. She'd noticed it the autumn before. My girl was skipping lunch, quietly, the way you do when the money is tight and you're too proud to say. So my friend started turning up on Wednesdays with a sandwich and a coffee, and she sat on that bench for 20 minutes, and she never once made a thing of it. 68 Wednesdays, 2 years. My daughter had asked her not to tell me, so she didn't. She let me think she was fussy about cafes, and she took the blame for the parking for 2 years rather than break a promise to a 19-year-old. I didn't go over that day. I finished my bad coffee and drove home. We still meet there. I have stopped suggesting anywhere else, and she has stopped apologizing for the car park. That story ends there. 68 sandwiches, one terrible cafe, and a woman who let me think the worst of her because a girl asked her to. I buy the coffee now. My oldest friend moved house and never told me. I found out from a photo online, a new kitchen and a new street, and the street was 8 minutes from mine. The first time she mentioned her bin day had changed, I didn't think anything of it. The second time, a card I posted to her came back marked "Gone Away," and she laughed it off as a post office thing. By the third time, I started paying attention. She knew about the roadworks at the end of my road, and there was no reason on earth she should. The story I landed on was not a generous one. A person can move house without telling you. That happens, and people are busy. A person can also move 8 minutes away and say nothing, and that is a different kind of quiet. I decided she had wanted to be near me without having to see me, close enough for a coffee she could cancel. I decided I had been quietly moved down a shelf. I carried that for 2 weeks. Then I drove over. I found the house from the photo. Blue door, small hedge, her car. I sat there like a coward for a while, and then I knocked, and she made tea like nothing was strange at all. It was the fridge that gave her away. A sheet of paper, her handwriting, my surgery date circled. Under it, one number. 34. I asked her what 34 was. She had driven it from her old place, twice at 2 in the morning on 2 different nights to get an honest number. 34 minutes, door to door. And she had sat in her car at the end of my road and decided that 34 minutes was too long if something went wrong in the night. 11 days before my surgery, she took the first flat she could get on this side of town. From the new front door, it is 8 minutes. She said she didn't tell me because she knew exactly what I'd do with it. I'd spend the whole recovery apologizing. She wanted me thinking about getting better, not about her. She still won't call it what it is. She says the flat came up and the rent was fine, and that was that. That story ends there. One photo, 34 minutes, and a friend who moved house rather than sit in a car doing the math. She swears the new kitchen is better, and it isn't. For a whole year, my oldest friend never told me one thing about her own life. Every call was questions about mine. The first time, I barely noticed. I asked how her week had been, and we ended up on my boiler. The second time, I noticed and let it go. By the third time, I started paying attention, and I started counting. 11 months of calls. Not one word about her job, her mum, her weekends. She knew exactly what my landlord said to me in May. I could not have told you one thing that happened to her. I filled the silence in myself. That is what people do when they have stopped letting you in. I decided she had a whole year I was not part of, and that she had chosen it on purpose. I went quiet on the phone and told myself I was only matching her. Then I tested it on a Sunday by deciding to give her nothing. I asked how she was, and she turned it back to me. I asked again, and she turned it back again. 4 times I tried it, and 4 times she came back to my week instead. So I drove over on a Tuesday without ringing first. She let me in, made tea, and asked about my sister. There was a notebook on her kitchen table with my name on the front. She let me open it, which I think surprised us both. It was all hers, everything she had not been saying. A promotion in April. A hospital scan that came back fine. A row with her brother, and then the making up. The dog she wanted. 40 pages, every entry dated. The first date was March. March was the month my job went. The house sale fell through twice after that, and she knew both times because I told her. She said she had done the sums early on. There was already enough on the pile. So she decided to be the one person who never put anything else on it and wrote it all down instead. She started reading it out to me the week I said I felt like myself again. It took 3 evenings. I laughed in the wrong places, and she carried on anyway. She still asks about me first, every single call. I'm getting better at waiting her out. That story ends there. 40 pages of a good year, kept quiet for 11 months by the best friend I have. I bought her a bigger notebook. For 14 years, my friend hosted Christmas Eve at her place. 3 weeks out, she cancelled it in one line and gave no reason at all. The message said she wasn't doing the 24th this year. Sorry. That was all of it. The first time I rang her, it went to voicemail. The second time, she texted back about her boiler and nothing else. By the third time, I started paying attention, because in 14 years she had never once been hard to reach. I took it exactly the way you would expect. 14 years is a tradition. Cancelling one by text is how somebody tells you the tradition has quietly become a chore. I decided she was tired of us and had been for a while. We had Christmas Eve at my house instead. My brother flew in from abroad, home for the first time in 9 years. My parents came, and my aunt, and we were all in one kitchen at once. That hadn't happened since I was 24. At 4 o'clock the doorbell went, and there was nobody there. 3 covered dishes sat on the step, still hot, lined up neat by the door. So I did 2 things. I watched the camera on the door. She was on that step for 40 seconds. Dishes down, bell, back to the car. Then I phoned my mother and asked what she'd said to her in November. My mother had told her about my brother, just chatting in a queue at the shop. The whole family would be under one roof on the 24th for the first time in 9 years. My friend heard that and got out of the way. She knew we'd never cancel on her after 14 years. She knew somebody would end up driving between 2 houses, so she cancelled first, before anybody had to choose. There was masking tape on every lid with the oven written on it. 180, 25 minutes, foil off at the end. The third dish had my brother's name on the tape. It was the thing he'd liked in 2017, the last Christmas he was home. I never asked her about it. I host the 24th now. She comes at 4 and she stays, and she still writes the times on the lids. That story ends there. 14 years of Christmas Eve, given up in one line so my brother could come home to a full house. She got the good chair by the window this year. That's all for tonight. 20 stories, and every one of them started the same way, with a friend who looked like they had stopped caring. It almost never means that. Most people are just carrying something quietly, and the quiet is the kindest way they know. Sleep well, and I'll see you in the next one. Good night.